This is the Marathon Handbook Podcast, and I am joined by the Beef Brisket Bowl of Runners, Senior Editor Alex Sear.
Well, hello.
You're a bowl, not a burrito, correct?
I'm a bowl guy.
Okay, you're a bowl guy? Okay.
Yes.
And Katelyn Tossi, you're like the keto bowl of our crew here. Is that how you want to be described? No, low carb, all power. Yeah. And I am I'm your lifestyle bowl, whatever the hell that is, Michael Doyle. I actually don't know what a lifestyle bowl is, although I do enjoy Chipotle. We're talking Chipotle. We'll get into that in a second, but we'll tee up the main segment of this episode of the pod, guys. We're going to do a little game that we've devised, which is we've taken four, let's call them enduring truisms or folk wisdom of running. And we're going to ask the question of these four ideas that I think everyone has a sense of, but I'm not sure if they're correct or not. Is it true that ... will be the premise of the main segment of this episode. Pretty sciencey stuff for the most part. We had to dig into some studies to try to figure out the truth behind these questions. But first, I introduced us as items off the Chipotle menu. And I don't mean to give our Mexican-American fast food overlords any more credit and marketing than they deserve, but this is a kind of a fun story. Fun content that they've produced out of this. So Strava and Chipotle have partnered, and this is not the first year they've done it. It's almost become an annual thing that they do in January, where they do the Strava Chipotle Challenge. So if you live nearby a Chipotle restaurant, the challenge is for you to run a segment, basically run the block around your local Chipotle as many times as you can in the month of January, rack up as many miles as you can logged on Strava. And if you are the king or queen of your local Chipotle, you have won a year's supply of lifestyle bowls.
That's a pretty good deal.
Is it?
I don't know. You can get a bowl, every day for 3. Well, guys, I have to admit, I've never eaten at Chipotle.
What? Okay.
Seriously?
Well, the closest Chipotle to me is in Miami, so it would be quite a trek. A bit of a swim or a bit of a flight to get there. Yeah.
That'd be a really dedicated month for you. You'd be like, well, yeah. I've uprooted my life to Miami to run one city block around the Chipotle by the airport. And then 31 days from now, I'm going to go back to Costa Rica with a year's supply of Chipotle bowls I can't eat.
They have to send them over in a container for me.
That's right.
The big Uber Eats bill.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. So this is the reason why we're talking about this is because there's been a couple of stories that have kind of bubbled up with this. One we're working on, which I will tease. So pay attention to our site in the next couple of days because it's a wild story. I so badly want to talk about it with you guys. And in fact, it's such a good, juicy, delicious, scrumptious story. Maybe we might even do a pod segment about it next week. But for now, I'll just tease it. We've got another story on the site right now about two ultra guys, Jamel Curry and Kevin Russ, who are located in Arizona in the sort of Tempe, Phoenix area that I believe they're in Tempe proper. And they decided to just throw it down around their local Chipotle. And they ran this like 380 meter loop around the shop for an entire month. Constantly, it seems. They documented it, of course, on their socials. And they each ran over 600 miles, like over 1,000 kilometers in a month.
That's right.
Around a goddamn Chipotle.
Oh, and it looked so frustrating because as I was watching some of the footage, they had to stop, for people walking by. It wasn't like you're running on a track or you have kind of an open path. Like I think they had to stop all the time. Traffic lights. Who knows what else was involved? It wasn't a smooth ride.
No.
And like do the math. So 1,000 kilometers in a month, or I guess that's like 650 miles.
Yeah.
It's basically like if you ran 150 miles a week or just under 250 kilometers a week.
that's like
On a track.
Yeah,
that's
keep going around. Yeah.
that's top level, like world's best elite marathon runners at their peak week is 250 kilometers. That's like
That's
Eliud
insanity.
Kipchoge breaking the world record in 2000 and whatever. Like that would have been his peak week. That's crazy. And they just did it for a month. I mean, I know obviously they're not running at a super fast pace, and hopefully they didn't do too many like workouts, but
I saw a lot of walking in the footage.
it's
Did you
just
guys see
racking up
any
the
of the?
miles. Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
walking.
exactly.
There's a lot of, I mean, this is one of the dirty secrets of the long ultra haul is that
Yeah.
once they disappear away from the checkpoint, it's a little stroll might be involved. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's a long day going around the Chipotle.
Yeah.
It just feels like Chipotles are strategically placed in cities in the worst possible place for you to run. You know, like downtown cores, strip malls, that sort of thing. Like it just does not. I think a lot of these segments must have been a pretty rough ride for runners.
Our Chipotle here is across the street from a bank surrounded by a bunch of condos in, I think, the densest area of Toronto, Canada. Like I didn't even attempt the challenge. I don't think you could get around it. I think there's a bridge behind. Yeah, I don't think I could do a full loop of Chipotle without looping around Toronto.
Alex and I have actually dined at your local Chipotle
Mm-hmm.
before. We had a nice lunch there last year, and yeah, that would be a hellish run. And you're right. I'm not even sure you could execute on that one. There's not one nearby in my neighborhood, so I'd have to travel to do it every day. What's the stupidest thing you guys have ever done for a prize in running? Because this is like up there. This is like just a miserable run that you'd have to do every single day. You're battling some other group of clowns for this same prize. Like, just seems like it's tilting at windmills, guys. This is ridiculous. What's have you done anything that compares to?
Uh, if do bragging rights count as a prize? Because I used to have this
Yes.
thing. Okay, good.
Yes.
Because this is the stupidest thing I've ever done on a continual basis. When I was in college, pre Strava, so or at least pre my own Strava account, so this is maybe 2014, 2015, I would run home from the bar.
Oh yeah,
I
Oh,
yeah, I've done that.
lived
here we
I
go.
lived 1.2 kilometers away from the bar. 1.2, and I lived on top of a hill. And so the run back from the bar was a slight downhill and then a right turn, up a big hill, down a big hill, then up a big hill. And I tried to do it as fast as I could.
This is after an evening at the bar.
An evening of drinking. It's usually 2 in the morning.
Nice.
Okay. An early morning run. Nice.
Yes. And I started timing myself and got down to like a 4:05, a time of 4:05 for 1.2
A
kilometers,
drunk 405.
which always felt faster, which always was in dress shoes. And then I started competing
That was
with a
my
friend.
question.
Yeah, no, you don't bring your running shoes at the bar. But I started competing with a friend and we started trading off times. And then in 2016, I got a Strava account and started logging these runs. And then it kind of killed it because I think a big part of the fun was in the legend. And so then it was a bit too measurable. And then we got intimidated. It was good to the point where like you'd stop drinking at the bar and you'd leave the bar early. And maybe
Oh my
you'd bring
gosh.
more comfortable
No,
dress
Alex.
shoes. And then we'd cross the threshold. But I think by the time I graduated, I had the fastest time. That should have been, it should have been a Strava segment. See, back in the day, we didn't do the Strava segments. Nowadays, this would be a Strava segment, and it would have to be run between 1 and 3 in the morning. But we missed out. It was the wrong time.
I like the time constraint to the Strava segment where you're like, that doesn't count if it was in the middle of the afternoon. If it's
Right.
2:30 in the morning and you're also indicating that you're like 8 beers deep, and then it counts.
Yeah, you have to have those. Yeah, you have to check those boxes off. A little tipsy and between 1 and 3 in the morning. I like it.
And you can't wear anything with a carbon plate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple of really ridiculous challenges that involve eating. I'm surprised Chipotle hasn't like taken this to the next level and been like, and you also have to eat like a one of our bowls halfway through your run every day or whatever. But there is and this is known in Canada. I'm not sure if it's known in the US, the Highway to McDonald's Challenge.
Yes, I thought that was too niche to mention. Yeah.
What is it? I don't know what it is.
There's a university in Ontario in the town of Kingston called Queen's University. It's a good running program historically.
Sorry, quick side note. Queen's University is also the birthplace of the beer mile. Please proceed.
It is. Yes, it is. That's right. It's one of Canada's great claims to fame. Maple syrup, universal healthcare, beer mile.
The beer mile.
That's right. Yeah. So Highway to McDonald's Challenge. Basically, a group of university students every year do this. I'm not sure if they still do anymore. They have to run from where they start their run every day. They run a few kilometers to the local McDonald's, which is near the highway exit. And then they have to eat I think it's like a double Big Mac, the largest fry, the largest Coke, and they have to finish it all and then run back. And the winner, of course, doesn't puke everywhere and runs the fastest time. In North Carolina, there's also a Krispy Kreme challenge, I think, where you have to run 4 or 5 miles in one direction, eat an entire box of Krispy Kreme donuts, then turn around and run back. Yeah. And people have strategies where they take multiples and crush them together so that they can eat them more quickly and things like that.
And ball it up into one big ball of dough. And then, I love donuts. I'd do it if it was Dunkin's.
Guys, you're grossing me out here.
Classic Bostonian
I hate Krispy Kreme.
Wow. Okay. We'll put a pin on that. But okay, let's take a break and we will leave Chipotle in the rear view, at least for now, and move on to, is it true that ... Coming up next. All right, guys. Let's play a little game. We're going to challenge your perceived wisdom or knowledge of running. We're going to stress test the truisms of running with a little game called Is It True That ... We'll do 4 of these questions. They also are questions that readers, listeners, viewers on our YouTube channel and on Spotify have also posed to us as well. Almost like a mailbag segment, but we're going to get kind of nerdy and we're going to leverage a little bit of research, some studies that have been done, and ask ourselves whether or not these commonly held beliefs in the running world are actually in fact true. Okay.
Let's do it.
First one. Is it true that running on soft surfaces like trails reduces injury risk compared to running on pavement or asphalt? Well, Katelyn Tossi, we've got ourselves the ultra trail queen here.
That's right.
I know that you ultra folks like to think that you're running on God's golden carpet every day, while schmucks like Alex and I are destroying our bodies out on the asphalt. Is there any truth to this?
I really feel like there is. At first, I'm going to start with the study, and then I also feel, and you're absolutely right. I am one of those people, as a coach, as a runner, who would say, yeah, running on trails, it's not so hard on your body. I really do believe it. And now that I took a deep dive into the research, I'm really glad that what I've been saying for all these years seems to be pretty true. Woo! Took a load off. I went in and found a study from 2023 from the Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And what they did is they took runners onto 3 different surfaces. So it was concrete, synthetic track, and then grass. Okay. So we have those 3 surfaces, obviously the grass being the softest surface. And they did find out that concrete did result in the highest impact forces while the runners were running. And grass and the synthetic track had less. So this suggests that grass, trail, synthetic track would be something that would be easier on the body in general. However, something that I found that was really interesting, that is also something I've plugged a lot in my coaching over the years, is that when you're running on softer surfaces like grass or trail, you tend to change your running technique. So this to me was a really interesting part of the study. Okay, so not only is the surface perhaps gentler on your body, but also the fact that you're taking shorter, quicker steps, right? Maybe you're shortening your stride a little bit. The people, when they ran on concrete, they tended to overstride a little more than when running on grass. You're constantly fixing and adjusting how your foot is landing. So you've got those short, quick strides when you're running in trail. I think if you've seen a lot of trail runners, you'll usually see that on technical terrain as well. That cadence just like speeds up and the stride gets a lot shorter. So this was a really interesting part of the study as well, which could lead to why running on those uneven surfaces, it could be less impact. Now, there's another part to this, which is, okay, if I'm running on grass, if I'm running on trails, could it reduce my injury risk because of less impact?
Yeah.
Yes, right? Because of overuse injuries. However, be careful, everyone. On uneven surfaces, it's easier to take a fall, twist an ankle. So you're looking at kind of a whole other realm of injuries that you have to be careful. But we're just looking at impact. It seems like the softer surfaces, being grass and trail, will help reduce the risk of impact injuries.
Okay, Michael, I'm good with that. We go to the next topic.
Alex, are you a dude who like
I'm doing the like, okay, so what can I add to what Katelyn's saying as I listen to her talk? I'm like, well, she's
like,
kind of just said everything. She said, man, okay, I'm glad to hear you say most of these things because I went so back and forth over my 10 years of running competitively. And most of that is because for my college days, I was living in this little town in Nova Scotia that had everything. The nice soft surfaces, the pavement for hard workouts, and a Mondo track for track workouts, everything. And since I've moved to Toronto, it's called the concrete jungle. It's true. All of my runs are on concrete. And so I'm trying to find research out there that tells me that it's okay to run on pavement all the time.
So as long as you change your stride on pavement, maybe you're going to save yourself from yourself here, right? Because it sounds like it's yes, it's better for you to run on these softer surfaces, but not for the reasons that necessarily you would think. It's more because you change the way you run and not necessarily the actual physical pounding from the running.
Yeah. One thing I can add to Katelyn's sermon, this excellent sermon, is,
jeez, Alex, what did I do to you today?
No, I think what I'm saying is I think you nailed it. The thing I'll add is it's crazy how the body does things without us noticing the subconscious biomechanics of the body. There's this thing that happens when you change surfaces. Apparently they've done studies on this. So if you say you start your run on grass, then you hit a paved loop or something like that, your leg stiffness will change. You won't notice this. You're not going to do this actively. Your leg stiffness will change to try to keep you going at the same speed and to try to keep you going at the same cadence. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is my own little personal take. I try to mix in different things because of that, so that I'm not always doing the same type of stride. What's that law that too much of anything is bad? Is it called Wolf's law? Anything in excess ends up being bad.
This is that we don't like to talk about that here in the running world, Alex. Anything in excess? What are you talking about?
You like running?
And by excess, I mean more than 300 kilometers a week, of course. No, I'm
That's
kidding.
right.
Oh, okay,
That's
of
right.
course, of course.
So the Chipotle challenge is out, is what you're trying to tell me.
Yeah, the Chipotle, that would probably fall under Wolf's law.
Okay.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that I like to vary things. I like to vary things.
Yep.
Also, it's a personal observation that I'll add. And I think this should be an enduring thought when you listen to this, is a lot of the topics that we're going to broach here are somewhat controversial in that there's some evidence on one side, there's some evidence on the other side.
Right.
There's a part that you have to bring to it as a runner too, and it's doing a little bit of self-experimentation while keeping these studies in mind. My part of it here is the type of injury versus the surface. I have had some bone-related issues when running too much on hard surfaces.
Right.
I have had tendon related issues when running on surfaces that are a bit too soft. So like a really forgiving gravel trail, for example, because I feel like my feet are pulling and yanking me forward. And so there might be a little bit of experimenting to do. And you're thinking, well, I'm prone to these bone related injuries. All pavement all the time doesn't feel that great on my bones. Maybe I need to alternate, but that's the bit of self-discovery you have to do as well.
Yeah, I was thinking, Alex, that when we're talking about training on varied terrain, and I've been doing it now, even though I'm right in the thick of my Boston Marathon training, I still have gone once a week out on a trail run. And I was thinking, okay, I wonder if this is what's keeping me, and, knock on wood, anything could happen. We never know. Hopefully I don't get injured during this process. But I think maybe that's what's keeping me feeling so great. Because even though it's just one day a week, or even sometimes 2 days a week for a couple of recovery runs, I'll go out on the trails. And I feel like I'm switching it up. As you guys know here, I've talked about it a lot, but there's a lot of uphills, a lot of downhills. And so also not just thinking about surface, but thinking about going up and going down, using different muscles, changing up my foot strike. I feel like that's kind of kept me healthy. I hope that's one of the things that has kept me healthy. And so doing that during this process, I hope that it's helping me and not hurting me. But I think people, it's like cross training. Instead of going out on a bike maybe a day a week or a couple of days a week, I'm deciding to hit the trails and feel like it's been a little more. But perhaps Michael, on the other hand, will say, but you're not logging as many miles as you would be logging. And so, yeah, it's cutting back maybe a tiny bit on my overall mileage. But, it's kind of a give and take there, like you're saying, Alex, to keep myself injury free, hopefully.
And I would say by contrast, like obviously if you're running, like you said, Katelyn, if you're running a road race, a goal race, say you're running the Boston Marathon as an example, which that's paved and it's hilly. So it's extra hard on your legs, right? You should, I think the conventional wisdom proves itself out here and doesn't contradict these studies that we've looked at, that you should spend some time on the asphalt getting your legs ready. You don't have to run every single run on a hard surface, but you should get comfortable with that feeling so that you don't show up on race day for the first time in months running on asphalt and you're just like, oh my God, what is this? This is horrible. My legs are wrecked after 20K. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So I guess, is it true that running on a softer surface reduces injury risk compared to running on pavement? I think the overall answer is yes, but maybe not for the reasons that you think. And also asterisks, unless you take a horrible fall on the trails.
Right. Or the surface is too soft. What if the surface is too soft? And, Alex mentioned the very forgiving gravel. If you're taking a step and you feel like you're taking 2 steps back and you're actually using perhaps muscles that you're not used to overstressing, or sand. I have one of my athletes going to the Marathon of the Sands. It's that 6-day stage race in Morocco in a couple of months. And I'm like, wow, that's good. Even though it's a pretty flat course, there are sand dunes. Of course, I have to go up and down. So it's going to be extremely hard. But I couldn't imagine. My husband has also done this race. I can't imagine running in the sand for a lot of that race. I just feel like that's got to be so hard on the body. So is there a too soft? Is that too soft? And would that actually have an opposite effect?
Yeah. Despite what David Hasselhoff might have led all the people of your generation to believe.
Thanks, Alex.
Don't run on the sand. Don't run on the sand.
I have a, perhaps this is not the hottest take, but I think the worst run you could possibly do, the most just god awful run I have ever done, is always on the beach. Beach running sucks.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
It's slanted, it's soft, even if you're running on low tide and the surf is sort of like packed down the sand, so it's harder and wet, still kind of soft underneath your feet, a little too soft. Running on that slant in one direction, there's no escape from the sun. It's usually getting hot out. And then there's all these people just enjoying themselves, lying around, swimming in the water, suffering away. And it's obviously usually a vacation destination. Just the worst place to run, running on the beach. Just don't do it. Find a running trail somewhere else. Find a soft surface. All right.
Find a running trail or a boardwalk along the beach so you can look out at the
There you
beach
go.
but not have to run in the sand.
There you go. All right. Let's move on to, is it true that number 2? Is it true that you should always try to negative split a marathon or we'll entertain other distance races as well for your best performance? Yes. The negative split is the best way. So we should say, for the uninitiated, there's a positive split, an even split, and a negative split. And that literally just means, let's take a marathon as an example. You get to the halfway point, you get a time at the halfway point. You finish the race, you get a complete time. You minus the first half off the second half, you're going to be either faster in the second half, even with the first half, or slower in the second half. If you're faster, it's a negative split. It's even, it's even. If you've gone slower in the second half, it's a positive split.
Positive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, is there any actual scientific studies, any evidence that proves that a negative split creates the optimal performance result, either for elites or for recreational runners?
I found something very interesting that actually a study from 2023 about positive splits for elites because they use pacers. So, for example,
sure.
this was I found super interesting. Look, and I know that we'll look at recreational runners as well, but looking at elite runners, let's take a look at Ruth Cheptegei. She did a huge positive split because she started out running, I think, for a 2:07 in the beginning of the marathon, right? So she did a huge positive split. Why not? But oftentimes, I know that she had a pacer just up until the end, but oftentimes the pacers kind of trail off, leaving some time left, some distance left in the marathons. So I read this study saying that the ideal strategy for elite runners who are going to use pacers and use drafting, they might end up running a slight positive split because when they're left alone at the end of the marathon, they might run just a tad bit slower. So, but then we have our world record, which was a negative split. So I kind of read stuff that was all over the place, but this positive split strategy was interesting to me.
I have a study. It's more geared towards everyone. It gains a lot of points because it has an incredibly huge participant base. N equals 876,000 results. So it's a very robust and broad study. It loses points because it happened in 1999. Okay. And a lot has changed since then.
Super shoe.
Yeah.
That's the main one, right? But I still think it holds value because it was so massive. And what it was is it did an analysis on these 876,000 runners to see what strategy they employed when they ran their best time. Okay. Was it a negative split or a positive split, and by how much? The first finding was that it was pretty much split down the middle. When they had their best time, runners had negative split 52% of the time versus 48% of the time positive splitting. So that's close to the middle with a slight advantage to the negative split. What's a little bit more interesting is that they also looked at how much the split was negative or positive. And by a whole lot, the best strategy to employ was to negative split by 1 minute. So if the second half of your race was 1 minute or less faster than your first one, you were most likely to get a good time. This by a lot. The second best strategy was to go 2 minutes negative split.
Okay.
The third best strategy was to go 3 minutes in a negative split. After that, the negative split times fall off a cliff. It becomes very, very rare to run your best time with a 4-minute negative split or more.
Right.
So after the first, the 1, 2, 3 minute negative split, the most popular way to run your best time is, weirdly, and I don't really know the explanation for this, is not by running a 1 minute positive split, but it's by running a 2 or 3 minute positive split. So I think the big takeaway here, because of the size effect of that 1 minute negative split, is that was by and large the best way to run a marathon.
Well,
Have your second part faster than first.
I'll bring in the recent elite performances to basically confirm or bolster that argument. Just to do a little tease here. Next week, we're going to go deep on the sub 2 hour marathon, which, it's still dangling out there that no one has ever run under 2 hours on a sanctioned course, like one of the major marathons, your Chicago, your Tokyo, your Berlin. No one has ever cracked 2 hours in an actual marathon race before. Kipchoge has done it once in 2019 in Vienna in a test event that was very controlled. And, we learned a lot from that. Also think he even split that event. That was like very controlled, very, very, very controlled, right down to an even split. But in the wild, in racing, the men's marathon record, unlike Ruth Cheptengetich's record, which was a positive split, the men's marathon record held by the late Kelvin Kiptum, set in 2023 in Chicago, he negative split it by about a minute. He ran a first half, 1 hour and 48 seconds, and then his second half was 59:47. Now you can talk about the reasons for that. Perhaps he was more capable of even running faster. That's a 2 hours and 35 minutes, the 2 hour, 35 second world record as it stands right now, as we're recording this on Wednesday, February 2025. And, there's a psychological factor with that. It's like, you've got a carrot dangling in front of you, the world record, your fastest ever time, maybe even breaking 2 hours in the marathon. But to have the confidence and the courage to run over that in the first half is tough. And it takes a real sort of self-assured attitude towards all that training you've done and the numbers and where those numbers point. And I think that translates to recreational runners as well, experienced recreational runners. So this is sort of like the next question within this is, where do we see positive and negative splits? Who should focus on trying to negative split as you've described, Alex? And is it achievable, say, for a new runner, somebody who's doesn't even know what their time is going to be when they are standing on the start line of their very first marathon? Like Katelyn, I imagine with coaching athletes of all different stripes, like we kind of see a few different outcomes, particularly with newer runners, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And my suggestion, especially to newer runners, is always to run conservatively in the first 3/4 of the marathon, and then try to kick at the end if you have more energy, because I would really not like someone to burn out, especially, so you have a really great experience. So, to be comfortable in the beginning. Usually a new marathon runner isn't trying to get a specific time. They're trying to finish, and they're trying to do the best they can. And they've been training hard to finish, to just get across the finish line. So that's always my suggestion. Does that always get followed? It's really hard to not get swept up in marathon excitement and to go out too fast off the blocks. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I don't think I've ever run a negative split, and that's always the plan. And I'm an experienced runner and a coach. Athletes do as I say, not as I do. And so I'm like, pounding off the starting line because I'm super excited, and I still sometimes get tricked by it. So I think for newer runners, it's a great idea to try to start out easy and try to do that negative split, but it is really, really hard to do. And I feel like sometimes, they end up burning out. But the best advice would be to absolutely go from less to more.
I think, I think I agree with you. And I also think it's a very psychological thing, like to approach a race and say, I want to negative split, which means you're okay with going through 5K, not at your goal pace, and trust that your goal pace is going to come later. Full disclosure, I struggle with that, man. It's really hard. And I'm not a marathoner, not yet. In the half marathon, I struggle with that. And so far, I haven't done it. My move, and I'm going to guess this is a very common move, and probably why the best times, people's best times skew more towards negative split than positive split, is that we haven't talked about what I think is the most common way to approach a race: hoping for an even split.
Yes.
What happens when you hope for an even split near the end is one of two things. the pace that you set out to run was a bit too hot and you slow down at the end. Boom, positive split, not your best day.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get near the end of the race, you have a couple kilometers to go, and luckily you find yourself with gas in the tank. Then you pick it up. It wasn't a planned negative split, but it means that you ran your race well, you had some extra juice to give at the end and you went for it. That's like the organic negative split. And those are usually my best races.
Yeah, I would say they're the best races for all of us. Certainly that's been my experience as well. I always go into a marathon in particular trying to get as close to even as possible with the idea of, as you've just described it, Alex, you can trademark this, the organic negative split. I like that as a specific term, a subdomain of what we're talking about here. That's like the ideal race, the organic negative split.
Yeah, it's unplanned.
Yeah, how to fit in the word
Materializes.
organic inside of this podcast without talking about the lifestyle bowl. Boom, you got it right here.
Exactly. Nice. Nicely done. Yeah, I think that's the goal. I think it's increasingly difficult as we go down in distance. I think when you go from even the marathon to the half marathon's a tricky one to negatively split. I think 10K, 5K, next to impossible. It's almost like you're doing it wrong if you're negative splitting a 5K. And then you get onto the track and like you'll talk to any quality track runner. I've spoken to Olympic 800 meter runners before, and they're like, they laugh at you and you're like, so could you ever run the second 400 meters in the 2-lapper like faster or even? And they're like, not a chance in hell. Like, it's just not possible. It's not possible.
Yeah.
That's because they're going off the blocks at full speed and hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
That's what's happening there.
The fade from the front mentality is on full effect there.
Yeah.
So I'd say the takeaway here is hope for the organic negative split, aim for the even split. And if you have a big negative split, it's just probably like you're either like newer to the event or the breakthrough was bigger than you'd even imagined in the first place. But like in a marathon, maybe that 1 to 3 minute negative split is kind of the dream scenario, right? That's the good day at the office, as they say. And I would say that it also indicates there's a lot of psychological positivity going on in the last 10K of a marathon, if that's what's happening. And that's what you should be looking for, right? These motivators, because it's a hugely psychological experience.
Passing people is a huge motivator.
Yeah.
Right. So so if you're running really, really well and you're passing people, you get super motivated. You see, okay, I see that person up there, I'm going to pass them. I feel really good. I see that person up there, I'm going to pass them. And you start playing a game, you start gamifying the end of a race. I like doing that. That helps me a lot. And it makes me forget that my legs are killing me. I can't breathe anymore, but I'm going to play this game and pass that person. So yeah, it helps a lot.
I'm that whack job on the side of the course in like Chicago after I've run the race, watching people streaming by. And I'm like 2 or 3 miles to go, going into my Airbnb. And I'm instead standing on the side of the road, yelling at random strangers, go for every spot. You can take that guy in front of you. And this person's like, running a 4-hour marathon. They're like, what the hell are you saying?
Like, shut up, man.
Yeah. But I think that that's a good motivator. I think that, like, let's be honest with ourselves. Being competitive and having that mindset drives you forward in the end of the marathon. So you might as well use that as a tool.
Yeah.
Because I guess it doesn't really matter if you finish, in my case, 251st instead of 250th, or in like a person in the middle of the back of the pack in a 50,000 person race, like 25,000 versus 24,498th or whatever. But in the moment, that might help you run a minute faster, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Use it. Like, you trick yourself, right? So, all right. So I'd say that there seems to be some both evidence and logic to this idea of, as Alex has coined the phrase, the organic negative split or the slight negative split, particularly in the marathon. All right, guys, let's take a break and we'll get into our final two. Is it true that? Starting off with some questions about super shoes. We'll be right back. All right. Is it true that super shoes don't work for everybody? Alex Sear, you are our resident Lord of the Vaporfly, the Evo King. What do we know? Like, let's just talk about actual research. What's the science saying? And I know this is relatively recent stuff because super shoes have only been in our lives since really 2017, 18 on a consumer level. A lot of people wear them. A lot of people all the way through a marathon, from the front to the back of the marathon, are rocking super shoes. I know there's been some questions about whether or not they call them the negative responder. Someone who does not respond to the boost that super shoes provide or theoretically provide. Is this thing real? And if so, what's the deal with it?
The negative responder or the non-responder so far has been a lot more theory than proven. And I think it's because mostly everyone who's tried the super shoes have acknowledged that they make them faster. If you don't acknowledge it, you're almost seen as a Luddite or someone making things up, right? Like last week we had our colleague Thomas Watson on the podcast because he wrote this piece titled, and I will call myself out here. I told Thomas, title it differently. It was titled Super Shoes Don't Make You Faster. And people clapped back at that title because they said, of course it makes me faster. People of all speeds have said that. And to be fair to Thomas, his premise was not that super shoes don't work, is that they didn't make you fitter necessarily, and that you'd have to acknowledge, no matter who you are, that across time, if you started wearing super shoes in the last few years, your PRs should be written with an asterisk next to them, because by and large, super shoes make you faster. Now, in the last few years, the conversation around super shoes shifted from, are the Nike ones better than all the other ones? To, wow, there's a lot of good super shoes out there. Which ones are the best? And further, which ones are the best for each individual person? Because everyone has a different foot stride. And so that introduced the question of, maybe we have let's call it a soulmate, right? A soulmate, a shoe that makes you run really fast.
See what he did there, Katelyn?
Yeah, I did.
SOLE.
And then
super critical soulmate.
Super critical soulmate. That sounds awful.
Yeah. It sounds like somebody you've been married to for a decade.
That sounds like a divorce.
Yeah.
But with that idea of having one super shoe work really well for you and perhaps another super shoe not working that well for you, it begs the question, are there super shoes that wouldn't work for me? And then the further question, is my stride just toast, and does it just not work for me, or would it not work for some people? And so I have yet to find evidence that there are people with a certain biomechanical quirk that makes them immune to the super shoe performance boost, which is good for people, because I would hate to be this person, right? Everyone else getting this 4 or 5, maybe even 7% bump in times. There are studies on this. And then have you just be stuck with no performance benefits? I'm not sure if that happens. What is true is what we just previously said, right? Like there's some super shoes that work a lot better for you than there are other super shoes. And you probably can feel it. Like, I've had this, so I review shoes. Okay. So I put on a lot of different shoes. Sometimes I put on a super shoe that just feels wrong. Okay. Mm-hmm. Either it is too high off the ground for me and I don't like the feel. Either it has too much of a rock forward profile and puts me onto my toes in a way that's just uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Or they rub in a weird way. And so, it's possible that if I compare those super shoes that don't work for me to a previous model of the, the Adidas Takumi Sens, those like racing flats from years ago before they had any carbon or supercritical foam to them, I might like those former shoes better, but by and large, super shoes will work. And I think you'd be really hard pressed to find someone who's a non-responder. And if you are a non-responder, or you think you are, maybe you just haven't tried the right super shoe for you.
Maybe you just need the Alpha Fly or the Adidas Pro Evo 1. It's only $500.
Yeah, come on. What are you complaining about? Right? Well, that's the other thing too. It's like, it's so hard to know what super shoe's best for you. Like to buy 5 different types and testing them all out. It's not realistic for the vast majority of people. Unless you get them for free, you're not going to do that. That's the tough part. Like, you might have bought one pair of super shoes at one point and been unlucky because they don't feel good on your feet, or they're the big bulky type and you don't like the big bulky type. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I would challenge anyone out there who's a non-responder to like go to a running shop, try a bunch of running shoes, super shoes, and I bet they find one that they like.
So I can lead into there's been some studies. There's been some groundwork done on super shoes. One interesting study identified it as, on average, sub 3 hour, more experienced marathon runners. So like a faster subgroup of marathon runners on average saw a boost of their running economy of 2.7%. So not quite the 4% that has been long used as the marketing tool for Nike to promote this huge wave in shoe technology, but still like a pretty substantial boost in your running economy, which is your ability to efficiently move through time and space, your body's ability to efficiently use energy as it's running a marathon. Then there was a later study that was done on slower runners in the 3.5 hour to 4 hour range, that showed that they actually um, didn't get quite the bump that the faster runners got. They got around a 1.5 to just under 1% in terms of their running economy gain. And the hypothesis there was that, like, because the super critical, the big, huge chunk of foam that is really kind of like we've discovered is the big reason, one of the big, along with the carbon plate, is the big reason why these shoes are producing such a huge bump in times, is because that foam needs to be loaded up with tons of energy. So there needs to be a big ground strike, and then the carbon plate flicks you forward, and then that energy is released and it creates a pop in your step, a jump in your step, right? And the theory is that older EVA style foam that you see in everyday trainers, for a slower runner that's not putting as much impact into the ground and their ground contact and their foot strike, isn't producing as much energy return. And so the EVA is like, the difference between EVA and supercritical foam in that context is not as big.
Okay.
But Alex, you've also looked at other studies, like the New York Times did a lot of work on this in 2018 and 2019. They found the opposite. They found that recreational runners actually gained more from super shoes than elite runners did, which I
Mhm.
thought was interesting and sort of, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, it's almost like there are two conflicting hypotheses, and
Yeah.
both make common sense to me. Like, I'm not a sports scientist, but the counter hypothesis to that was that if you're a recreational runner and you're not as fast a runner, you might have more imbalances and inefficiencies in your stride that a really good shoe that propels you forward and keeps you on track can fix. Whereas you
Mhm.
put a pair of super shoes on a professional athlete like Eliud Kipchoge, and there's less benefit to be had, right? Because his stride is almost perfect already. And so if I had to guess, it's kind of both things happening at once. And also, I think, and I'm off the top of my head here, but I'd say that all recreational runners, not elite runners, are not all created the same. Like, you could be a recreational runner and have a beautiful stride, but you're not putting that much force into the ground. And so
Right.
maybe super shoes aren't helping you as much. Or you're the reverse, right? You put a hell of a lot of force into the ground, but your stride is flailing on both sides. And so maybe for that runner, a super shoe can help you. This is non-scientific on my part here, but it's maybe these conversations that end up, you know, explaining a little bit why there's some people who, wow, I've put on these shoes and I'm 10% faster. And then other people who put them on and say, that's a bit, maybe a little change, but I've kind of running the same times.
I'm both of those people, depending on what my end result is.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So I think the takeaways here are this. How do you know whether or not super shoes work for you? I would say, one, if you run in them and they don't feel like they're like impeding your stride or getting in your way or too bulky or sloppy or awkward to run in, and as long as you feel good running in them, as long as you feel fast running in them, they're working for you, I would say.
Mhm.
And to that, something called the placebo effect, which recent studies have shown is a thing in
It's a
endurance
real
sports.
thing.
It's a thing, which means that if you believe something is giving you an advantage, you will actually gain an advantage. So it's this whole idea of like putting on the outfit, right? Putting on the armor, putting on the costume, putting on the mask, as it were. I am a runner. I'm putting on my super shoes. I'm putting on my singlet. I'm putting on my short shorts, my split shorts, putting my Garmin on, and I'm going to run this major marathon. It's like you're preparing yourself to do the task, and it's giving you more confidence, and that will give you a boost, if nothing else. So if nothing else, that's worth your few $100 right there. There you go. All right. Last one, guys. We should say, so is it true that there are people that don't respond to super shoes? Unclear.
Unclear. Yeah.
The flip is, do super shoes make you faster? Overall, I would say yes. It does make most people faster.
And
They
I'd say we could accept the premise of at varying levels, depending
Yes.
on the individual and the shoe.
Yeah. But if time is
Absolutely.
important to you, I think super shoes are essential. All right, last one. Is it true that there are performance enhancers for runners that are both legal, naturalish, and safe? Or a variation of this one will be, is it true that the only two ways that you can legally and safely enhance your performance in distance running is by consuming beet juice and caffeine? All right, guys. Either of you ever drink beet juice in training or before a race?
I got on that trend again in college. A friend of mine was doing his like undergrad thesis on does beetroot juice help with running performance? And in part for the study, but also just out of curiosity, I started buying like Walmart grade beet juice and chugging it. I think I drank it at night. I can't remember why, but it was like my night drink for a little while. Yep.
And
Some
how did
of
you
us-
feel?
Well, if you start consuming beets or beetroot, try to remember that at all times of the day before becoming really
God!
concerned and running to your doctor. The
I'm
pigment,
dying.
the pigment is very strong and it
Indeed.
doesn't disintegrate in your stomach.
One of the side effects, there was another, one of the other, I don't know if it's a side effect or one of the risks of taking beet juice. I never got into trying it because that trend was really big here a few years ago. The beet juice loading, especially before an ultra, I
Oof.
didn't do it because I often have low blood pressure. I've been really prone to that as a child and as an adolescent. And one of the side effects that I have read and can be a possibility from drinking beet juice is low blood pressure. So I always got, even if it maybe wasn't 100% backed that it would happen to me, I was worried about it. So I didn't really ever try the loading myself, but here it got really, really popular and trail runners swore by it.
And that makes a certain level of sense because of the science behind this. So I should say beforehand, I love how like some people in college go through like their Marxist phase. Alex went through a beet juice phase.
Yeah, that's as
Incredible
red.
stuff.
That's as red as it got. Yeah.
Indeed. We'll leave that at that. Yeah, but there's been quite a bit of research done on this. There was a pretty significant study in 2018, took a dozen or so like legit high level, I would assume collegiate athletes, distance runners who had like a pretty good VO2 max in the 70s. So like these are quality, efficient athletes, and had them do run to exhaustion tests and found that like overall, like there was like the outcome was very likely that a regimen of beet juice doping effectively for a couple of weeks before the test significantly aided in their performance of like a run to like time to exhaustion, basically tests. Now, that's because of a key ingredient in beet juice, which is nitrate, which gets turned into nitrite when it's taken into your body. Stomach enzymes transform it internally. And basically what that does is the nitrite opens up your blood vessels and allows oxygen to pass more quickly to your muscles. And that's the reason why it works. And looks like it's like pretty much scientifically proven that yes, beet juice does help. The only problem is intake, because beet juice's one major side effect is, man, it goes through your system like grass through a goose, guys. So
people are at home. Does that mean fast or slow? I've never seen grass go through a goose.
Oh, you need to run in an area like Toronto where there's a lot of Canada geese. Quickly.
Good
Goes
point.
through quickly.
Oh, yes.
Goes
yes,
through quickly.
Now I see what you mean.
So
Me
all
too.
of your ultra running friends who were beet juice doping before an ultra, it's like I imagine the second half of that race, there's a lot of like
Oh my God.
a sea of red on the side of the trail. Okay. Get my mind out of the gutter. Guys, I'm sorry, I did it again. Let's pivot to caffeine, which is just going to be no better.
Yeah, wait, yeah. That's on the
Diuretic.
topic of poop. Let's talk about coffee.
It's like we did one episode where we didn't talk about poop, where our boss was in the
time.
episode.
Yeah.
Now-
Oh, yeah. Thomas
Now
was
we're
it? Yeah.
back.
I
We're
was
back
so close
zero
to mentioning
episodes.
poop, and then I didn't want Thomas to get mad.
Exactly. Get fired from the show. Okay. So the other one that is often bandied about as a key performance enhancer that you're not going to get, in trouble with WADA overusing is caffeine.
Mhm.
And I'd say in the last 15 years, you've heard of even elite marathon runners, like caffeine dosing, like actually taking caffeine pills, over-the-counter caffeine pills before a race, and then even during a race in some instances as well. First things first, you guys, Alex, like your bisexual phase in college, did you also go through a caffeine phase as well?
What was that? I said beetroot. I said beetroot.
Sorry.
I know I didn't go through either of those phases. I didn't go through a caffeine phase in college. I only started drinking caffeine after university, so in 2018. But I did pop a few caffeine pills in college. At least that's what I thought they were. No, I'm kidding. They were totally caffeine pills.
To study or to run?
To run.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it also
Studying.
If you've listened to this whole podcast, you've gathered that we've experimented with a lot of like little running things in college, and we had this phase, third, fourth years, try some supplements. So around the same time as the beetroot phase, we tried popping caffeine pills, especially for night races, so that we wouldn't crash. And whether it was placebo or whether it was actual ergogenic effect, it seemed to help me. Now, this was before starting to drink coffee. And one thing that happens when you drink coffee, as you all know, is that your tolerance for caffeine goes up. Now I have the reverse effect happen to me. I don't necessarily feel a huge effect when taking my regular coffee before a run. I feel like I'm at baseline maybe. But if I go for a run in the morning without my coffee, I feel very sluggish.
He's narcoleptic. He's falling
Now
asleep.
you need it.
Yeah.
You're addicted. You're addicted to it. I haven't done the caffeine load, which I was reading a bunch of studies, and a lot of runners are taking 200 to 300 milligrams before they start a race. So about an hour before for the race. I haven't done that. The gels that I do use when I'm competing or running long runs, they have caffeine in them. I use the power gels, and they've got 50 milligrams of caffeine per gel. So if I'm taking one or even two an hour, I won't kind of get over the limit of what you should be taking, because I was reading that maybe, about 100 milligrams per hour would be the limit during a race or during an activity. And I have taken that, and I do feel that I'm not sure if it helps me or if it doesn't. I like the gels. I started taking the gels. I feel great during a race. Now, for an ultra, for a 100-mile race, I have brought those 5-hour energy boosts, which is, probably just a huge shot of caffeine. And I have taken them, and it does help, because when you're doing a 100-mile race and you're at the end of it and, but that's more not to fall asleep rather than thinking about, performance benefits. It's like, I don't want to trip over a rock, and because I've been running for 20 hours and I'm just about to finish up this race. So I have used that, but that's been at the end of a race as opposed to before the race. But about loading before, Alex, you said you did feel a difference in your races. Michael, have you tried that before a marathon?
No, I'm too lazy for this stuff. I tried the Beet thing briefly, mainly as an experiment. I've been working in running media for a long time, and this was like there was a phase, I'd say like it was before that study was done, actually, maybe 2015 or 16. There was a lot of hype around it. There must have been an initial study that was done because there was a slew of companies that came out with like concentrated beetroot juice that you could like, they swore that it wouldn't cause stomach upset. You could drink it like 15 minutes before your run or whatever, before a workout. And so I did some experimenting with that. I didn't really notice anything specifically, apart from like forgetting and then being horrified in the bathroom afterwards. But caffeine, I'm a coffee drinker. For me, not to go down the toilet humor further, but like it's just a part of my routine before a race to make sure that I'm ready to go. It's not to like create some sort of like performance stimulus in the first 5K of a marathon. And I haven't really ever messed around with caffeinated gels either. I've got a couple. I bought a few Morton ones at one point. I have drank the caffeinated Morton drink, but I don't know. I don't think about that stuff very much. And I've not really experimented with it. I do like the idea of during an ultra, like, oh man, during like a 100-miler, if I'm going all day, all night on a race,
Yeah.
I'm going to do breakfast. I'm going to have a coffee halfway through, maybe a little like bacon and egg sandwich. I'm like, I have to go through the daily routine a second time, brush my teeth, the whole bit.
I brush my teeth when I'm running a 100-miler. I bring those
Do you?
little, yeah, of course I do. Because, you're taking in gels most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't take in that much solid food, but I do stop maybe like in the second half. But, that sugar on your teeth all day
like you need
is
a little like bird bath and a toothbrush to kind of refresh yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Aren't you excited, Alex, for your future as a middle-aged ultra marathoner when you get to like, when you just burn out of these fast speeds and you can transition into a life of brushing your teeth and having a bath halfway through a race?
I was worried about the broken bones, and now I'm worried about the cavities. I don't think I'm going to do it.
Oh, guys, I have
we'll
I have a middle-aged story. Should I take this aside? It has nothing to do with running. But Michael,
you have a middle-aged story?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, how Michael just said middle-aged. Guys, at the supermarket the other day, trying to read the nutrition facts on a label.
Oh, you did this. You did the
I
squint.
did this. I did the
You pulled it away.
Pull it way back. And my friend that I was with was like, "Why don't we go next door real quick to the optical store and have them do a quick test on your eyes?" Because I was like, yeah, because when I was 30, I had laser surgery because I had minus 4.5 in each eye. Like I was really nearsighted. So I was like, oh yeah, it's been 12 years. It's probably reverse effect, and I need to get surgery again. That's obviously what it is. And the woman's like, you can go to the closest CVS or PriceSmart, get a +1. You've got age-related farsightedness. I was like,
there you go.
What? She's like, oh, yeah, when you're over 40. I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, God, I got to tell Michael this story.
Drugstore glasses in Katelyn's future. You're going to be getting your glasses out to read the menu in Boston. Oh, hold on, let me get my glasses. Do you have your glasses? Hun, do you have your glasses? I can't find my glasses.
Yeah, that's around the time. That's a time in your life when you start calling people hun as well.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
I don't mean to digress. Sorry.
And the middle-aged. Yes. Where the hell were we here? Yeah. Oh, caffeine. So there was a 2023 study that I think like it was almost 300 endurance athletes, runners. 80 of them can sort of self-described serious runners. Only 18 women in the study, though, which is always a little alarming. It's like, I don't know why caffeine wouldn't work for women and would work for men. But anyway, overall, the study seems to suggest that caffeine, yes, indeed, does have a positive impact to distance running outcomes. So I think we can answer that one with yes, there are two. Beet, caffeine. They enhance your performance if taken properly and judiciously. timed well, in the right amounts, you can see a performance boost without, I don't know, being an age group doper or whatever. Is there anything else? Alex, you've done, you've gone in ventures in creatine recently for overall performance enhancing.
I'm about to. So the creatine is ordered. It's supposed to come in this week. I did this after consulting with a friend, Brady Holmer, who's very online, sports science. I just love his stuff. So I follow his stuff. He's a fast runner himself. I think he's run like 68 over the half marathon and 226 in the marathon. And he mentioned on, is it a podcast or some article, that he had started experimenting with creatine. He was happy with the results. So I sent him a message. I asked for a recommendation, and I'm getting the creatine. So I hesitated for a long time. Like, creatine, I think, has the connotation of being like a gym supplement. If you're trying to gain weight, you have your protein and your creatine. I'm convinced now, based on what I read, that that's a little bit of a misnomer. It's also a naturally occurring substance. So like you produce creatine yourself. So it's not like you're introducing something foreign to your body. The one thing that scares me a little, and the reason that I didn't start it during my past training block building into Houston, was that I guess that some people tend to retain more water weight when they're on creatine, which means they'll gain 5 or 10 healthy pounds, but also you don't want to gain 10 pounds of water weight before a key race. So I decided to do it now, just because I'm like at the start of another training block. And I guess, the reason for that, it's supposed to help with muscle recovery. And there's some new research that shows that it's good for distance runners. And so, as someone who's training pretty hard every day, you want to be recovered for your next run. Anyway, I'll have more updates at the end of this training block, and I'll see. The thing is, it's hard to know, when you start a new training block, what's helping? Is it that you're just getting fitter, or is it the supplement that you've introduced? But yeah, I'm curious to try.
You have to keep.
At the very worst, you're getting the placebo boost from taking creatine. If you believe,
that's right.
Brady Homer has told you that it's going to have a positive impact. You trust him, and you believe yourself, then you're going to get a little boost.
It's the Brady boost. Brady boost.
The Brady boost. Ooh, that's a good segment. And we should say, speaking of Brady Homer, newest member of the Marathon Handbook family.
I didn't know if I could say it.
Yeah, we can say it now, because I think his first newsletter is going out on Friday. So yeah.
Awesome.
So if you do not subscribe, this is what a segue. Well done. Thank you, Alex. It's just like the softball underhand pitch, and I'm going to crack it out of the park here.
He handed it right to you.
If you do not subscribe to our newsletter, we're up to like 220,000 subscribers, runners just like you, 5 days a week. Katelyn is one of the the captains of the great ship Marathon Handbook newsletter. It goes out Monday to Friday, 5:05 Eastern time. It's chock full of good stuff, and including Brady's newsletter going out on Fridays. And it's going to be very if you know Brady, if you follow him on X, he's a very respected sports science guy, great runner, good storyteller, and is able to unpack these sort of complex ideas, sports science and nutrition and fitness training. And he's going to put that together once a week on Fridays for us. And we're going to get him on the show doing the odd segment as well. He's a good talker as well. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to be at the Boston Run Show, March 1st and 2nd. Alex and I need to book flights and find a hotel.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, we're going to get our act together here. But we are going to be there come hell or high water. We're going to be
Don't leave me alone.
You're not going to be doing the pod by yourself, Katelyn, I promise. We're going to do a little live podcast on the floor at the Boston Run Show on one of the stages. Some great speakers, Lazarus Lake, inventor, creator, mastermind behind the Barkley Marathons. He's doing a keynote. Boston Marathon winners Mev Gillespie and Des Linden are also talking. And all the brands are going to be there showing off their new shoes. So it's all the upside of an expo, none of the downside of having to run the friggin' race. So that's March 1st and 2nd. If you're in the Boston area, you can get tickets. We'll put a link in the show notes for that. Or if you're just looking for a fun little trip, come for a fun little running weekend. We'll go for a run with you. Let us know you're going to be there.
Yes.
We'll hang out. we'll do something. If you're there to see us, we'll be there to see you as well. Okay. And last thing, guys. Oh, Alex, anything? Got all kinds of stuff going on the YouTube channel behind the scenes, but I guess we can formally say now we can pitch this content around the Wahoo Kicker run that we have produced. We've got a couple of videos coming out.
Yes, we do. Couple Wahoo Kicker run related videos. So one is a very thorough review of the treadmill itself, how it connects with Zwift, how it goes really fast, how it operates not quite like other treadmills, and it almost has not really a mind of its own, but it caters to the runner. It's got this cool thing that other treadmills don't have. I'll leave it at that. I got to tease it a little bit.
Yeah, it's the runner's treadmill.
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible. We tore the thing apart trying to see how it worked, figuratively. Not
yes,
literally.
Yes. Along with that, we have a more of a vlog. We have 2 vlogs coming out. You're going to hear me talk a lot in the next couple of weeks. One vlog around my key preparatory workout for the Houston Half Marathon, which was on the treadmill because it happened during the deep, dark winter here out in Canada. And a second vlog that's going to be everything Houston. So it's me in Houston running the half marathon, training with my friends. We have a couple new one-time guests on the Handbook channel. And after that, we're going to get into some pretty heavy shoe reviews because I'm pretty excited. The 2025 models have made it to my door, a lot of them.
Nice.
And I think we're going to start with a couple Hoka shoes. That's all I'll say right now. But we have the very new Hoka shoes. One looks incredibly funky, and the other one looks very durable.
Alex, I can also tease some shoe review content. I've been running in Saucony's products pretty extensively. And I've done a couple of workouts in the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, which is a pretty coveted new model of their super shoe. I will contribute my thoughts, my first impressions on that as well in the near future. And finally, guys, next week's podcast, we can tease it right away. I've been laboring over hopefully for you, the consumer of running content, a fun kind of interactive feature all about the sub 2-hour marathon and the fact that it's never been broken on a legal course. Mr. Kipchoge, of course, did run sub 2 once in a test event in 19, but that was almost 6 years ago now. We've still not seen anyone break 2 hours. So I did a big feature unpacking why that is and who might finally break the 2-hour barrier and if it will happen this year. And we're going to get into that in great detail in next week's podcast. It's going to be a little special episode all about the 2-hour barrier in the marathon. All right, guys. Until next time, and happy beet doping.
Happy beet doping. Remember that you've taken it.
Yeah.
Or your body will remind you.
Yes.
Until then.